Apreciados amigos y amigas, qué alegría que estemos todos juntos aquí en la Iglesia de Todos los Santos. Dear friends, what a joy it is that we are here together at All Saints Church. We are online one more time, probably two more times. When the pandemic started spiking again, we decided that it was the better part of caution to not be streaming live from the sanctuary for several weeks until things went down. Things are moving in the right direction. Please, please, please continue to stay home and masked and wash your hands as you are able. And we hope that this Sunday and next Sunday will be our last two on Zoom, and we'll go back to live streaming in the sanctuary. We do hope everyone is safe at home, and we know that not everyone finds home a safe place. And so we're going to put some resources in the chat for the National Domestic Violence Hotline. And so if home is not a safe place for you, you can certainly call one of us here at All Saints Church. And that is an incredible resource that can be called, it can be texted, you can go to the website. And then also the Trevor Project. The Trevor Project right here in Los Angeles, incredible resource for LGBTQ youth. If you feel you're not in a safe place, or if you just need someone to talk to. Again, you can always call us here at All Saints Church, and the Trevor Project is an incredible organization and wonderful companions on the journey. Also, when this pandemic started, we began to support some of the local organizations with which we have strong ties as our partners in love, because we wanted to ensure that their good work continued during these challenging times. So this week, our partner in love is Young and Healthy. Young and Healthy was actually started with the help of All Saints Church, and it connects underserved children with free medical, dental, and mental health care through volunteer doctors. It helps families with insurance enrollment and navigations, and provides referrals to local services. So to make a gift to Young and Healthy, and I hope you do, click in the link, which is just yhpasadena.org, and that'll take you to a donate place. And you can also learn wonderful things about this wonderful organization. Now, on to this morning's forum. It is wonderful to welcome back a longtime friend of All Saints Church, Jessica Jackley. And wow, where to begin? Jessica is an entrepreneur, an investor, and a speaker. Her work over the last decade has focused on financial inclusion, the sharing economy, and social justice. You might know her best as the co-founder of Kiva, which is the world's first crowdfunding site for microenterprises. Kiva lets users lend as little as $25 to individual entrepreneurs, providing borrowers affordable capital to start or expand their businesses. Since its founding in October 2005, Kiva has facilitated more than 1.5 billion in loans. And I actually logged onto my Kiva page this morning and realized that I had about 120 bucks that had been returned in loans, so I reinvested it. And so it is literally the gift that keeps on giving. Jessica has two new ventures that are in the process of launching, which we're going to talk about, one called AllTruists and the other called Untapped Capital. And so we're going to talk about that. She and her husband, Ressa, have 4 young children, and that's actually a part of the story of AllTruists that we're going to talk about in a few minutes. So Jessica, welcome. It is fantastic to have you here.
Thank you so much. It's so nice to be together. And I know this is kind of as good as it gets in terms of togetherness these days. So it's just such a pleasure. Thanks for having me. And I have my mother-in-law, Sohela, and my mom, Sandra,
Good morning.
in our little room here today, in my very messy office that's becoming a warehouse very quickly for AllTruists. But
wonderful. Well, but before we get to AllTruists, I'm just sort of interested, like I like looking at sort of origin stories.
yeah.
And, you know, something in you before you even started Kiva, there was an impulse in you that led you to that. And I'm wondering, just to even go back there, I mean, I know you heard Muhammad Yunus speak and that sparked an idea, but is there an impulse that led you to start that, and where has that taken you since?
That's such a nice question. So growing up in my own wonderful, very supportive, very positive church community, first at an old Presbyterian church outside of Pittsburgh, where my mom actually was baptized and married, like in the family. We'd been there for a long time. And then later at a more kind of evangelical, I had a kind of a more modern style, but I had these two really wonderful anchoring experiences over the years in my own spiritual journey at those two churches. And both of them exposed me to a lot of service project, a lot of opportunities to contribute. And the good and the bad is, or whatever, it all worked for good. I felt confused sometimes by those projects. Sometimes I felt like I was really being helpful, and sometimes I felt like it only was, sometimes projects are often made for the volunteer / donor type person, right? To make us feel a little bit better. And so I had a lot of questions around those. I had questions about charity versus activism. I had questions about short-term solutions, long-term solutions. And so I was unsatisfied often with these myriad experiences, both as a volunteer, sometimes on Saturday mornings, or whenever it was. There were often just like one-time opportunities. I also had some ongoing things. And then as a donor, as a very, no one says low net worth donor, but I wasn't the high net worth donor. I was like the everyday person donor who never got fancy treatment because I didn't have fancy checks to write. I had a lot of questions about those experiences, and those drove me to want to do a few things. One, get closer to the people I was trying to serve through those two main buckets of options, right? Give money, give time. Like, what does it look like to get closer to the person that's receiving the benefits, if any, of my efforts here? And also to understand like the systems in which these situations occurred, and which, oh my gosh, sorry, somebody's like moving a truck outside or something. These situations in which people found themselves in, it's structural poverty. I also was so curious about organizations, right? Like I had these false impressions, these false ideas, but it was painting with a broad brushstroke, I guess. But I thought, well, it seems to me the good guys out there, the organizations doing really cool things to help people are nonprofits. And therefore, those are the good, and for-profits, traditional businesses must not be so trustworthy. And so quite naively, as I graduated college with philosophy and poetry degrees, not business, because I was very skeptical, I thought I'll go into a nonprofit, and that's all I knew. I mean, it's weird to pursue a career, not weird. It was not straightforward for me to pursue a career based on the set of things that it was not. Like it's a tax code, right? It's a tax code. It could be almost anything. It's like when I talk to folks and they're like, oh my gosh, you like nonprofits? My friend runs an aviary in South Dakota. You should totally connect. You'll have so much in common. And I don't know, maybe. Right. So anyway, that was my pursuit. I wanted to figure out, how do we help, right? We all have this desire, I believe, to be helpful, to be useful, to serve other people around us. I think that's some of the best in all of us, right? That we're created with that. But I didn't know how to do it. And most of the time I felt frustrated. So I dug and I tried to ask a lot of questions in those processes. So that's sort of the beginnings for me.
Well, and I got to say, Kiva, and this is, I'm just going to sort of take a fanboy moment here. I followed Kiva since it really started. A couple jobs ago, I ran a nonprofit called Episcopalians for Global Reconciliation, and we tried to work throughout the Episcopal Church, connecting people with global partners around what was then called the Millennium Development Goals. And Kiva was just a gift, because it was a way for people to get personally involved on the grassroots level. And so many of the people that we had the opportunity to loan money to were women. Which of course was one of the MDGs, now the Sustainable Development Goals. And so we actually had a program called Give It for Good, where we invited people to have a dinner party at your house. That was back when we could do that. And and everyone would get together and then say, okay, how much money would you have spent? You have a potluck, but then you say, how much money would you have spent if we'd gone out to eat? And you put that money in a pot, and then we logged on to Kiva, and we said, where do we want to invest this? And then the groups would just continue to, the idea was the groups would continue to meet, see what the loans had happened, and continue to invest more money. And so what Kiva allowed us to do was for individuals on a very personal level to be involved person to person, and not just say, oh, I'm giving to dig a well somewhere. Well, that's nice. But to say, no, I'm connecting with this person whose face I can see, whose name and story I can know. And it can help build empathy in me. And it feels like there's seeds in each of, hear you tell the story of Kiva, and I see seeds of AllTruists and Untapped Capital in that. And I want to start with AllTruist, where you talked about sort of the frustration you had in terms of service. So like launch off that and talk about AllTruists.
This is so fun. I mean, are you kidding me? Like, this is such a gift to me. Besides talking about my children, this is my second most favorite stuff to talk about. I want to say one thing in case Kiva is brand new to anybody who's listening. Like, the thing, it's hard to remember 15 years ago, but the things that were different and new then that felt like, wow, we're going to really push the envelope here were, what if you could connect directly with this person, not just someone like, what if you could lend, not just give? And giving, I'm a fan, giving's great. It's just, what if you could do the thing itself that was being done on the ground? Like, wouldn't that be more interesting? There are all these little mini what ifs. And I think the takeaway for me that I always want to share with anybody ever who will listen to me for 5 seconds is, I was 24. I was a kid right out of school. And it was actually a blessing. It was an advantage to not already know kind of the way things worked, because we were able to approach a problem with very simple and I think clear frustrations and ask what if, and then try to make those handful of adjustments that turned into, making a 0% loan from the lender side of things online to a specific person. Anyway, it's just funny because today it doesn't feel like that innovative, and people thought it was a really crazy thing way back then. And
it was wonderfully crazy. It was fantastically crazy.
Yeah. And we thought it was illegal. We actually had no, here's the thing. So I would cold call the SEC, which by the way has remarkably good kind of customer service, if you want to call it that. They would call me back and talk to me straight up about things. But I remember thinking, well, is it worth risking somebody knocking on our door and getting mad at us, meaning maybe arresting us? And I remember thinking, well, our hearts are in the right place. I'm sure it's going to be fine. We'll just explain to them what we were trying to do. And I learned later when I went back to business school, not as a staffer, I worked as an admin for a while in the Stanford Business School, but I went back as a paying student, and I learned that I'm very risk tolerant. So that was a big takeaway for me. Anyway, Kiva's my first work, my first baby and my first love. So anyway, thanks for asking about it.
Oh, sure.
Okay. So 2 new projects. One is pretty straightforward, but it feels so good to finally get to do it myself. So I've been working with a number of different funds over the years that invest at the seed stage and sometimes pre-seed stage in startups. So what that means is right at the very beginning of an entrepreneur's journey, particularly, entrepreneurs, if you want to get into that system of venture funding, you have a particular set of goals and a trajectory that you hope happens. And it just looks like that. Just know that it looks like that up and, not like lifestyle business or whatever. You want to get on a scale, you want it to be a very big thing in the world. So I've worked with other funds in the past that focus on a variety of factors, and it's been a wonderful educational experience for me. I wanted to start my own because I felt, everybody has their own unique set of community and insights and preferences and all that stuff. And I kept seeing amazing entrepreneurs pass through on my radar. And I didn't have a very direct way because I don't have my own financial wealth myself. I feel like I have karmic wealth out, I feel so lucky and blessed in every other way, but I didn't have my own pile of money to invest. So we'd been raising, my partner Yohei and I have been raising funds for a small fund to invest in entrepreneurs at the pre-seed stage who have big ideas that will hopefully eventually lead to real change in the world, positive change. Not all of them are on the nose, social impact minded, but what's great is all of them have something to do with a culture shift or promoting access over ownership or something that we think is still really good for the world. And what's great is when you're there at the very beginning with entrepreneurs who sometimes are pre-revenue, sometimes a lot of things, you get to help shape that perspective with them and kind of sew into the fabric of those first few months and years of culture. What does it look like for us to think about showing up in the world responsibly and to think in the broadest way about risk and responsibility and to have what ends up being legit social impact, which by now there's stats all over the place about why companies that actually, I think, don't have those blinders on and are just focused on a bottom line, just focused on financial profit, you're going to miss out on how the world works and where things are going. So it's a strategic move as well as it feels to me like lovely, redemptive, work that I get to be a part of as an investor and an encourager. So that's Untapped Capital.
So can I just stop real quick before you jump to AllTruists? A couple things. First of all, can you unpack what does seed and pre-seed mean?
Totally. So pre-seed and seed, usually a company might be raising, I know that there's by the book answers for this, but I'm going to be a little more qualitative than quantitative.
Go for it.
I feel like that's more interesting. So if you have an idea and you're like, what if one day I go make a beautiful yoga studio on the corner and it'll be so great. And you're just talking about it as an idea. You don't have customers, you don't have the, location yet. You're very, very, very early. We just call that pre-seed. There are these stages of funding that if on a traditional sort of venture funded company path, you hit and you go through. So a pre-seed or a seed round, which is slightly later, you might have hit a handful of more milestones that I just rattled off, might be slightly more mature in the business's life. You might raise $1 million, a funding pre-seed can be a smaller round. Maybe you'll raise $1 million or $2 million or even $3 million. I don't want to get into valuations. That's too much. But basically, and then there's things called a Series A, Series B, et cetera. There's a whole other conversation to be had about the life cycle of, I think, these newer, more like these cutting edge ventures that aren't necessarily saying, I want to build, I want to follow this exact path and then go for an exit. There are a lot of ways that a hybrid organization, a social enterprise can go. Like I said before, these structures, these tax codes that you can choose for your ideas, they're like little vehicles to get you where you need to go. And it depends on what kind of fuel you can find, how quickly, how fast you want to press on the gas, so to speak, how straightforward the path is. Is it a windy mountain? Is it a clear road? There's so many geeky analogies I could get into, but what I get excited about is seeing these brand new for-profit ventures. They've chosen a for-profit structure for a variety of reasons. Seeing them get started in the best possible way and then shepherding them on along all the other phases that hopefully they go through. Did I answer the question?
You answered it perfectly. I just wanted to make sure that, we had sort of like those terms defined. Now, go forward on AllTruists.
Okay. You're so nice. And for all the friends, I'm just seeing like the little numbers. I don't see you and I'm not making eye contact, but I'm so grateful that you're listening and indulging this. It was not just a business.
Are you kidding? This is awesome.
This is like my values and my dream, kind of becoming a thing in the world. And I just am so excited. So I said, Kiva was my first love. Truthfully, even with the other things that I started, this is well, the two that I'm starting now are it's another great love. I guess they're twins, but AllTruists. So parents, it's hard to volunteer with your kids. It's real hard during a pandemic. And even in non-parents, aunties, everybody, it's very, very hard. Anybody, right? 90% of people say they want to volunteer more. 90%.
Wow.
We all have this intention. We all have this desire to like get in there and be helpful. For free, right? Not some exchange of, we want to be helpful. But people say, studies have shown, it's hard to find opportunities, hard to schedule opportunities. Goodness, heaven forbid you want to actually bring kids as well. It's a whole other set of requirements that are very hard to suss out. And then to do them from home, to find these opportunities from home right now, since we all can't be out together, it's really tough. There are some lovely resources, but the other thing that I feel, I always wonder, should I say this or not? But it's in like the survey that I was just citing.
Say it.
Survey. People say the volunteer opportunities just aren't fun, and they sometimes aren't fun, right? So kids like fun things. Yeah. So AllTruists is going to ship. The first one's going to ship in May, and will be live. The site will be live in another week or two. I have a splash page up. But anyway, AllTruists. Wow, I'm super caffeinated. Is going to bring volunteer, kid-centered, right, family-friendly, do at home, volunteer activities, as well as empathy building activities and content and a donation experience that's super tailored to kids and online. Once a month in a box to your house. And there's like myriad other sort of subscription boxes for kids. And it's funny when you really peel back like the marketing, you see that they're all sort of selling, we'll help you make your kids. We'll help your kids become more well-read, more, they'll become little chefs and eat all the food. They'll be better dressed. They'll be whatever, right? They're all the STEM projects. We love those. We get those. They'll become little scientists. Great. Nothing is really focused on how do we build these deep values that are central. I have another stat. 90% of parents say above all, whether it's being successful or smart or anything else, the number one quality parents hope that their children embody is to be caring. So parents we all want our kids to receive these core values,
right?
But how the heck do we do that? And especially how do we do that when we can't gather in person, when there's so much happening? So the boxes will be as follows. They'll have content. that presents a big world issue, global goals style, right? MG, Millennium Development Goals, now global goals style, sustainable development goals, in a friendly and truthful but not terrifying way. I had a mom, this was such a great quote, one of my tester friends, families, she said, "Oh my gosh, I am so scared to talk about climate change with my kids. I don't know how to answer those questions. I wish they'd just ask me something easy, like about sex or something." Like, okay. So it's hard to talk about
that can be a different box.
Poverty, right? And so there is a climate change, a climate action box. So content that helps guide parents in conversation with their kids to kind of get the fun facts, the not so fun facts, but look at all the ways we can help kind of content. Then there's an empathy building activity. I have so much stuff on my desk. I've got to show you. So for example,
give us examples.
Okay. So for the clean water box, look at this. There's a little, so we talk about for the clean water box, how people, many people, it's normal for them to walk to water and to carry it back for hours a day. And so we talk about cleaning water. There's a water filtration activity, and moving water. And there's a little cute pump. I'm kind of bananas over this thing. I won't just show you with this. It'll be loud, but it's so cute. And then for the affordable housing box, I mean, are you ready? This is on a pallet. Can you even handle how cute?
Yeah.
But we talk about like what a typical house in the majority world looks like, and they build a house. It's so fun. So they're empathy building activities. So, for the, I'll stop there. There's empathy building activities that bring to kids and families a way to understand an issue that they probably haven't had to experience in the way that most of the world does day to day. So there's also like a water walk you can do. There's also like for the food and hunger box, there's activities there. So you can kind of imagine the empathy building activities. Then the like really exciting piece here for me is new ways to volunteer. So I'm designing these proprietary experiences with nonprofits that I know and love and trust. So for example, for the housing box, the affordable housing box, kids will do 2 volunteer activities. One, they'll get a house number, like a digit 0 to 9, and paint it and decorate it in bright colors. And they'll mail that in along with the second activity, a little keychain that they make for the homeowner's first house key. Mail those back in. And then News Story, my partner charity, they make houses that look like this. This is another activity that we're actually not going to do because it's lots of small parts and stuff, but they'll mail those back in, and those numbers will be offered to new homeowners to create beautiful, colorful addresses on their houses. And their new house key will go on that keychain. And then, so there's a volunteer activity for the, we all need the bees box. There's a pollinator hotel that you build. So the box always becomes something too, which I'm super psyched about. But so,
oh my gosh, hold that closer to the camera.
Oh my God, it's so fun, right? So these are paper straws and a pine cone, whatever. So little activities that you either use at your home and then sort of contribute in an online, take a picture and put it online so that the nonprofit partner can see there are more friendly pollinator homes out there in the world, things like that. For the water box, we're working with an organization called Paper for Water, and kids will fold origami decorations and mail them in an envelope. And there's going to be a big installation next January where a donor is contributing funds to make that installation happen and bring attention and more funding to the issue of clean water. Anyway, I'll stop. I can talk about this forever. The last piece of it is a donation experience. So you'll scan a QR code and then head on to your account page on the website and get to see there's $5 in every box. And that's without any other donors chipping in, which I hope to achieve, over time. At least $5 every box. Every kid gets to direct a donation. So if it's with, for example, one of our water partners, it'll say, do you want to help dig a well in Ethiopia? Do you want to help provide a water filtration system for a family in Ecuador? Do you want to contribute to a sanitation project in India? It'll be 3 different options all around the world, some in the United States, some international, and they'll get to pick. They'll get to watch a little video about each, and they'll get to choose where they help contribute. Anyway, that's what I'm doing, and I'm so excited. It's my favorite.
Well, and so they, with the donation piece, first of all, this is fantastic.
Thank you.
And we're going to put in the chat, people go, is it AllTruists.com or AllTruists.org? I forget.
Yeah, and I'll put it right now. It's it's 2 L's.
AllTruists.com.
Sorry, I swore I would never do like a kids backwards RS, but I had to. I loved it.
So I'm going to put it in so the panelists can see it, so that everyone can see it, AllTruists.com. Actually, yeah, so there it is. And if you click on that, you're not live yet, but you can sign up for an email list.
Totally. And then I'll just let you know when we're live in the next few weeks, and it'll be fun. Thank you for hearing me. Thank you.
Are you kidding? This is fantastic. This is so perfect. And so a couple things. First of all, about the donation piece. So $5 per child comes with it, but then kids also have an opportunity to contribute more of their own money if they want, I would imagine.
Totally. So that's something we'll be building out over time, like the minimum viable product, the up and running. You can actually buy a box and we can actually give it to you, and we can do the basic functionality. It may not be for the next few months, but we also have like accounts where you can add on and say, guess what, kiddos, mom, your parents have put in another $10 for each of you to direct. Or you can imagine, like, there's so many ideas I have about marrying this with other tools that exist out there. Like, for example, my kids have their own little debit cards, and there's a spend, save, and give section, but the giving isn't linked to anything. And I think it should be. And I've watched, anecdotally, I see on social media, and I know from parents, actually some in this community, people try to rig it themselves and have like fun giving activities for kids, but it doesn't feel like a complete experience, and it doesn't feel like a regular experience. Like, we want this to be a habit in our home. And the cadence of once a month for now feels good, especially when we can't get out of the house once a week to see all of you live. So that's how we're thinking about it.
So what is the age of child that this is geared towards?
I know this sounds crazy, because anyone who knows anything about kids is going to hear this and think, what? It's too big of a range. But 3 to 11, we're thinking about, like, we're kind of planning, really it'll work pretty seamlessly for, I think, 5 to 9. Right. But I'm testing with a few years up and down there. I think because there's an assumption that there's parental involvement, it's not a box or a set of activities that you hand to your child and they go do by themselves, which some of the other subscription boxes can be. But this should be a family-centered activity. Right. So we think with a little bit of extra translation and with the guide and with options. So for example, the origami for the water box, there's a really simple, like, 3-fold project. And then there's one that's more complex that, like, so for our family, I'd have the baby would be looking on, eating things probably. And then the 6-year-old would be doing his thing. And the 9-year-olds would be doing a slightly different and more advanced project. And you can imagine decorating a house number, for example, for the other one I mentioned. Some of them will be, I'm sure, like works of art and beautiful and detailed. And some of them will have a swipe of paint, and they'll be fine too.
Yep. Oh, that's great. Well, so now, like Sister Wendy says, these kids' boxes look like so much fun and creative. I wish my kid was younger so we could do them. Do you have any boxes, kits for us senior citizens?
Okay, so that's the big vision, right?
Yes, we'll talk about the big vision.
Yeah. I mean, I think my heart right now is just every day, I want to be able to give this to my kids. And I feel like there's a real pain point there. I also think the more, so when eventually, yes, there will be, not this second, but it's not like adults can't do these activities. I think they're really fun myself. I mean, you don't even understand. I'm having so much fun with this stuff. So I think adults can do this stuff too, for sure. I believe it's easier to start designing for kids and then add on and make it more complex, as opposed to taking things away. But the idea that you could, for, an organization like, or if your company volunteer day, right? You're all going to go out and plant trees, but then maybe rain is forecasted, not here. Maybe you could say, we're just going to order 500 of these activity kind of kits and do them all together. I love that idea. There are some companies, well, there's 2, I say some, there's 2 that I've seen that are attempting to do this. And, again, for better, for worse, like, I applaud them for just existing and choosing this kind of mission, but I don't find them to be that interesting. One that I got, I won't like name names, but I'm offline with anybody, but one that I got, it was a box with a baggie inside and a bunch of like travel sized toiletries. And the activity was put the toiletries in the bag and then mail it back to us, and we'll give it to somebody who's in a shelter right now. Yeah. And I did it with my kids, and Cyrus, I love it. I mean, I love them. Cyrus was like, he's 9. He was like, Mom, I feel bad to say this, but this isn't very efficient. And I was like, I know. He's like, why didn't they just put it in the bag? Like, so we could have our involvement. So I think there are a lot of kit making activities. My kindergartner just did one of these kits again for school, and those are okay, but there's so much more that we can do if we just plan a little bit. And nonprofits, I think where this is going to add value, hopefully, nonprofits, I'm preaching to the choir here. Nonprofits often they're focused on the thing itself, the delivery of products and services, whatever it is, to help the beneficiaries that they are focused on. And that's what they should be doing. Then, it's always interesting to see how buyer and recipient are split in a regular, for-profit model. That's what the market is, right? You sell something, if people buy it, they like it. Nonprofits have this extra challenge of telling the story to donors while serving those that need the thing itself but cannot pay. So it's split, but rarely is it a direct, like they might spend some time on volunteer activities, but unless it's really useful here, it doesn't really come up, unless it's really useful in donor grooming, for lack of a better way to talk about that. It always sounds so, donor grooming. I think of somebody like brushing their hair or something weird. So like donor grooming, it's this secondary or tertiary thing, like out a few levels to either of those functions. So hopefully if I spend time in my team, I say we, like the royal we, I have like 2 friends helping me on nights and weekends so far. But as we design better activities, it'll be a way to engage everybody who cares and do something really useful in both of those pursuits. But it takes a minute to step back and do that third thing of designing another piece there. So I'm hoping I can help there.
Well, yeah, and that actually fits with, I'm reading a book right now called The Revolution Will Not Be Funded, which is about the nonprofit industrial complex.
Oh, I want to read that.
And yeah, it's phenomenal. Our friend Andre Hendry turned me onto it. And it says, yeah, the revolution will not be funded beyond the nonprofit industrial complex. I can put something in the chat about it. But part of what it talks about is that because nonprofits, and churches are the same way about this, because in addition to the mission, you have to be beholden to a donor base.
Right.
That like you have to make sure you're continually engaging the donor base, and you end up serving the donors more than you end up serving the mission. And like for example, what you described of like, hey, the job is to put the toiletries in the bag. Well, that's not only not efficient. You think about the environmental damage that's being done with the shipping and everything like that. And so one of the things I love about a sort of a red thread that's running through everything that you do is keep it small, keep it local, keep it personal. And that, I think that has a bigger chance for it to be outcome driven instead of donor driven. Has that been your experience?
That's my hope. That's my goal. I think, what's sad is, truthfully, there are a lot of wonderful organizations out there doing beautiful, practical, wonderfully executed work and serving people that really need what they're doing. But again, the buyer and recipient are not the same. So the recipient is very happy, right? And it's really effective. It's really working. But that can exist, and organizations can still die because they somehow don't do this part well. And then, of course, you have the opposite. You have great storytellers, great fundraisers, great people with a lot of money who can raise it for whatever's happening over here. And unless there's an internal, like you have to choose on your own to have a discipline for quality control, right? Otherwise, who knows? Like these are just 2 completely different functions. And it's there are nonprofits that I think have really done well by separating them out in a very clear way, where they have, like Charity Water does this, New Story does this. They have, here are our donors. We're going to tell you what we do, but we're just going to either do monthly, have enough of a robust monthly donor community that it works, or a handful of really wealthy individuals, or grants coming from foundations, whatever, but they kind of block off and separate out. Our operational funds are covered, they're over here. And in doing so, they're able to do 2 things. They're able to have 2 sort of separate teams, like that don't get, because worst case, you're compromising between, because you want to, you're trying to serve 2 masters, right? So that's not good. And it kind of frees their teams to focus on the work itself, whether or not it tells a beautiful, easy to put in a marketing brochure story, whether or not a donor said, oh, but I really have a heart for this country. Can you work there? They're doing what they do in a way that's I think a little more pure, but still they got to do both, right? Unless, and then there's, I've noticed, so Kiva, nonprofit, right? 501c3, pure nonprofit, but we built into that a bit of a tie. The product itself is moving money around. So we're able to kind of, when you're moving that much money around, you can add in these options to have revenue
Mhm.
somewhat be tied to how pleased so like when a lender would lend money, we'd say, cool, all of it's going to go to the recipient, but do you want to like add a little tip on top and add 15%
Right.
to cover operation? So, and then when it moves back and forth, even if after borrowers repay, it sits in our accounts for our Kiva's accounts for a month or 6 months, there's a way to safely earn a little interest there. So there's
Right.
ways to make it happen when the thing itself is moving money. In other situations, I have watched, and it's kind of broken my heart a little bit. I've watched organizations that like they should not be trying to be sustainable by having some sort of profitable activity as part of their service delivery, but they're trying because then they're a little bit more freed from this storytelling and donor grooming thing. There are just some things that aren't going to be sustainable. Like it's just the world needs to be generous and be helpful to those that have less. Like, and when I think it can mess things up to try to think too much like a business in the nonprofit world. Like business is not at the corner market on making everything okay, right? Like, oh my gosh! In fact, I'm giving a talk next week. It's a private thing with a business accelerator community, or else I'd invite you all. But it's basically what nonprofits can teach business, because you do have to be more creative with incentives and with the currencies that you use there, since it's not a straight up we're all here to make money kind of assumption. So yeah, lots of thoughts there, as you can tell.
No, that's fantastic. We're starting, and a reminder to anyone who's watching us on Zoom, you can put questions in the Q&A feature. We've got a couple of those there. If you're on Facebook, put them in the comments, and our greeters will make sure that we get them. So a couple just sort of technical questions. Bonnie and Howard ask, is this currently local, or can kits be shipped anywhere in the US?
Anywhere in the US.
Fantastic. And then Jody says, who puts the kits together, and is return packaging and postage included?
So I swear to you, this is like vulnerability right here. So this is the warehouse right now. We're going to clean out the shed next weekend, and because deliveries will be easier there and the boxes are getting really heavy. So for the first few months, I want to have my fingers on everything so that I can know, I need to be close and personal, but eventually we'll ship to we'll actually have warehouses and stuff. But for now, it's me, and I'll recruit my kids, and I'll recruit my husband, and it's gonna be fun.
That sounds like how that works. So one of the things you talked about is like it's always a challenge trying to figure out volunteering with our kids, and especially now in this time of pandemic.
Yeah.
And you've been involved. In fact, I'd never heard of the term the sharing economy, which is just one of my favorite phrases. I'd never heard of that until Kiva and you. And so what are we learning during the pandemic about creativity, about entrepreneurism? What has the impact of the pandemic been on the sharing economy?
Okay, that's a brain question that I hope I might need more coffee for.
You might, that's okay.
But I'll do my best to answer. So, okay, part one. Anytime I'm asked about entrepreneurship, I have to define it and get into the
for it.
Romantic definite ideas about it. So for me, entrepreneurship is about, so there's Howard Stevenson, a Harvard Business School professor, has a definition that is, I love it. Entrepreneurship is the pursuit of opportunity without regard to resources currently controlled. Sounds academic, but listen.
Say that one more time.
Yeah, you don't have to twist my arm. The pursuit of opportunity without regard to resources currently controlled. So to me, it's about the pursuit. It's like so faith building, right? It's like all about faith. So it's about pursuing something that you believe should be in the world, right? It's like all make believe, but pursuing that opportunity, pursuing that thing you want to build or create or put out there and this is important, without paying too much attention to, disregarding, right? Without regard to resources currently controlled. To me, that means I take all the liberty I want to with this one. So it's pursuit, not possession, not pedigree, not who not your network, not do you have the right education, not do you have the right experience, like what have you done in the past, are you qualified to do? No, there's so many barriers that we can encounter, external and mostly internal, I think, about whether or not we're good enough to pursue that thing, this idea that we have in the world. And I think entrepreneurship to me is about waking up every day and figuring out what the heck is next, what the next step is, but saying, I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to go over, around, and through. I'm going to get something done, even though there's always even though.
Right.
There's always
Yep.
but or despite. I'm going to figure it out and find a way forward. And Kiva taught me that, right? The entrepreneurs that I met and worked with through that over a decade, they're my heroes. That's what my whole book's about, right? Like those entrepreneurs waking up and literally starting businesses with the dirt beneath their feet, brick makers, or they have almost nothing, but there's never quite nothing. We always have something, and they make beautiful things out of that. So that's how I think about entrepreneurship. And I think no matter what your trade is, no matter what the focus you have in your work, you can work and live entrepreneurially, whether it's being more, of a problem solver, and asking those what if questions to make things better in your own job. It doesn't mean necessarily starting a new organization. It's just being a person who sees other ways, sees better ways, sees faster ways to pursue those opportunities that we all are pursuing every day. So that's how I think about entrepreneurship. And I think during a pandemic, for me, I have mentioned to you that our littlest, my daughter, turned 1 on Friday.
Yeah.
And our world for the last year has been slower and smaller and close to home. And it's such a joy. That happens anyway with babies, right? But the pandemic galvanized that. And it's lasted for much longer than it would usually. But it's really, for me, been clarifying and focusing. So there's just a hyper focus to days. I think a lot of parents feel this way. I think a lot of us feel this way. My day is family and work and, basic physical wellness, like exercise, eat, sleep. And it brings into stark relief, I think, the things that are important and essential and the things that are not. We joked also about it's so nice to just wear pajamas all the time, except for today. And to not have to commute for meetings. There are benefits to this. And when I have clarity like that on what do I need to do and what don't I need to do, to me, it feels more productive and I can have better insights. The visual analogy here continues for me. It's clarity of vision, clarity of, being able to see something from different facets, different angles, and figure out the best way to go about work. You asked generally about sharing economy though. So for that, if you remember one thing about the sharing economy or collaborative consumption, there's a lot of ways people talk about that.
Okay.
I think of it as access over ownership. And that's a beautiful idea, right? So think old school sharing economy, right? Libraries and laundromats. New school sharing economy, it's still, does everyone have to own a car? No. There are ways to rent a car, borrow a car, walk up and press something on your app and it's unlocked and the key. It's amazing the ways that we can share that particular resource, right? You can get a Lyft, I was going to say the other one, but I'm not going to say it because I like Lyft better. Anyway, that's not a thing that you have to own today to get around and utilize a car. So, and with technology, of course, it just is totally supercharged. So the spirit of, hey, we probably all have what we need if we are open-handed with a little bit. If we think about, you can't always all the time be using XYZ resource. So the more we're open to, it's hard to do during a pandemic though. The more we're open to that, the more there is to go around. During pandemic, I think what's tricky is a lot of those cycles sort of shut down or got quite slow. So the sharing economy is giant. So I don't know if I can say much more about all the effects on it. Now I want to have a better answer to that. So ask me in a week.
Okay, we'll ask you in a week.
Yeah.
I want to jump back to a question that we sort of skipped over a little bit before, which was about return shipping on the kits. Is that already postage paid as part of the package, or what is that? Okay.
Yeah. So shipping out, I don't know right now. I haven't included that in the box cost. So as a buyer, so there are going to be two kinds of buyers: the actual family themselves and the gift givers. And my mom is a very big gift giver of some of these experiences. So I'm talking to you. So you'll be one of the two, and whoever is the buyer will pay for shipping out to get the box to your home. In terms of sending the materials out into the world, that'll be covered by us and sometimes maybe the nonprofit. For one of them, so the branding is using that ALL and saying we all need clean water, we all need this, we all need that. So there's one that's we all need shoes, and it's such a fun box. And there are nonprofits that, for example, give you a prepaid envelope that will be, or bag that you could put in there to send in well-loved but still usable shoes that kids have outgrown, for example. So that'll all be.
What's the project in the shoebox?
Okay, so we have it like I'd say 85% of the way there.
Okay.
So my colleague that's working with me like 10 hours a week, nights and weekends, spent 7 years working at Tom's. And so she's like leading the charge on this box. But there's a sensory activity that you can do. And again, depending on like a 3-year-old versus a 9 or 11-year-old, there's a lot of difference. But you can basically, we have suggestions and we'll have a few sensory things in the box that you can walk on with bare feet and imagine we're walking with bare feet all day, every day, and what that feels like. I mean, if you're the parent, you can throw some Legos down on the floor and instantly.
That's right. Yeah. Right. We've all felt that. Yes.
And there are other things that you can do when it's not a pandemic that we can suggest and go outside. And but for now, one of the design imperatives is it has to be able to be done inside the home within an hour, and you have everything you need in that kit. And also the kits are they're either disappearing kits, like either things are going to be completely recyclable or compostable or whatever, or they're keepers. Like you're going to get 1 or 2 things that are keepers that are very clear too, like the plastic pump or something. Yeah. Anyway, that was a bit of a tangent, but yeah, shipping.
Well, no, I think that's like, I sort of took you on that. And actually, are there other, because, to me, this is what's bringing it alive. Are there other sort of projects or things that you want to describe that because everyone you've described so far has been super cool.
They're so
Are there
fun,
others
right?
that you're really excited about?
Okay, well, so there's also this sort of subcategory. So I'm thinking of the 4 parts as learn, empathize, act, and give. Okay. But under act, we have a bunch of like do better at home activities now that you know better, do better at home. So one is a little chart that even a 3 or 4-year-old can do this, but you track your water usage over a day. And there'll be, picture based, like make a note here, make a little dash here every time you turn the faucet on, flush the toilet, get a drink, bathe or take a shower, whatever. And then over time, you can reduce water usage. So one thing we'll include in that box is a little egg timer, a tiny little thing to take shorter showers. And I was thinking about including one of those faucet aerators, but the feedback I'm getting so far is like, we don't need to change our plumbing. Thank you so much. But like, good to know that. But I want to include things that you can use at home to change behavior. Another one on the food, the hunger, and like it ends up being a food waste kind of focus box. We want to provide like a countertop, compost bin. We also want to provide, there's really cool gadgets, again, in the spirit of do better at home, really cool gadgets to be able to track what's in the fridge. And like, so I told you the box always becomes something. So it becomes a pollinator hotel in one case. It becomes a planter in the We All Need Trees box. It's so cute. It becomes part of the water filtration activity in the water box. In the food box, it's going to become, we think, I'm giving all my ideas away. So
no, this is great.
It's going to become an eat first box. So you can use it to make sure before things go bad, like they're prioritized in front and center in your fridge. So you can kind of turn it into a little, so much fun. And there are lots of cheap little gadgets and stuff for on the fridge or in the fridge to, keep food fresher and remind you to use what you have. There's so much good stuff out there. So what else? Yeah, there's a recycling one. Oh my gosh, so fun too. That comes right before holidays so that you're kind of queuing up conversations about responsible consumption and use of what you have before the onslaught of gifts happens. I'm also looking at you, Mom, just kidding. And so there's a really cool company that we're going to partner with to walk through what happens to these weird things like light bulbs and batteries and stuff once they leave your home, because those are the hard recycle items. But also there's a project, one of the volunteer activities is mailing in old crayons and markers to nonprofits. There'll be 2 bags yet again. Not everything will be mail away. Sometimes it's hang the pollinator thing outside your window. But you'll be able to send those in so that they can be recycled and passed along to somebody else. There's so much good stuff.
That's great. So John Armstrong says for local shipping, that can be part of the shared economy. Also, a website that lists to, from, and when could be used by volunteers to pick up and deliver packages, and shipping boxes needed could be bags or other containments. That's an interesting idea.
Super fun. So that's really fun. Yeah. I feel like I love it. Thank you. This is great ideas. I'm also thinking as a default to keep things simple at first, everything will be offset, which is more expensive. Yeah. And I'm not the biggest fan of offsets. I feel like just do the thing right itself. And then, it feels like the rich man's way of like making things okay when they're driving a Hummer around. No offense to anyone, but anyway, but I think offsets could be a way to go about it at first to make sure everything's green and sustainable. But I really like this idea of like using maybe existing things, or when you're working locally, once we can get out into the world, again, part of the vision eventually is this thing should be so smart that knowing the zip code to which a box is being mailed, there will kind of be an auto suggestion that I can include in there, or that can show up on your online account that tells you actual real places you can go in person to kind of do more if you want to continue and like volunteer in real life as well. But I can't do that yet.
Well, so one of the things, and actually, you know, by the time we actually can come together again, this is going to be up and running. And one of the things that I know, and I'll just speak for myself, there were so many joys to being a parent of younger children, but one of them was I had a socially acceptable excuse to just play with their toys because it was so much fun. And so I think like what I would love to have you do is like when we can come together again, for you to come to All Saints and with a whole bunch of these boxes. And we'll just set everything up in Sweetland Hall. Oh and, you know, families are just like, I want one, I want to play. That we can just sort of all get our, you know, roll our sleeves up and start working on this together.
Oh, that would be the best thing ever. And I will bring them all. And I just want feedback. Like I want these to be wonderful experiences. And I think because kids have such a good, like they know, they're so smart and they know when something, like they know when they're being, when something's really helpful or when it's not. So again, the put stuff in a baggie activity, Cyrus and Jasper, they did it with me. They did not feel like they were being super helpful. But I think these other things, when they're putting their heart and soul into something artistic or whatever, I want people to really feel engaged and inspired and want to do more. But anyway, that sounds like a plan.
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, definitely. Let's do it. So Stu says, and this is about sort of entrepreneurship. When we talk about pre-seed, and maybe he's even talking about before that. Says, question for those 10 steps behind with nothing but an idea, where do we start? So what would you say to an entrepreneur?
Number one thing, talk to the person who would benefit from your idea. So like we've been talking about, capturing value from something like business model, that stuff is quite frankly, like easy. You can do that later. First, make sure your idea is a thing that people need or want and is useful. And then you can like really massage that and figure out how to, all the other mechanics of getting it out into the world. So if your idea is going to be of service to, you know, women between the ages of 30 and 47, like go talk to them and say, this is what I'm thinking. What do you think? Do you have this need? That's the first thing. Because if that's not there, nothing else really matters. So that would be number one. And then number two, you know, I'm a fan, obviously, all these messy things around my desk of prototyping. Like actually, even if it is ugly and scrappy and doesn't totally work, just make it as real as it can be. Fold it make something out of paper and say, it'll be about this size. Make it, you know, iterate, right? Get a prototype made, as silly as that sounds, and make it a real thing. And then keep making it better and better and better and better and test it, right? Go back to those would-be customers, those eventual beneficiaries of the thing, and say, I meant this. Is this what you saw when I described it? And then go back again and say, do you want to try this out? And so, yep.
That's great. Okay, so something that I've been thinking about since we've been talking is, and it really is revolutionary and it so fits with our values here at All Saints, is the economy as we know it is incredibly transactional, and the value is to create more value for yourself. What you've talked about, really, it's got a deeply spiritual root to it. And it is about, well, what is value? Yeah. You know, because, you know, we can say, well, value is like, well, profit, and I can make this much more money, and then that's a good business. But can you talk from your own sort of spiritual center about what drives this for you in terms of creation of value?
Totally. So I have to say, like, side story for 10 seconds. I remember when I went back to business school, what was that? I guess it was 2005. Yeah. And I remember, like, here's this philosophy and poetry student sitting in class, like, where am I? And they start to talk, the one professor started to talk about value. And I remember asking the friend next to him, like, wait, does he mean money? That's what value, that's what the code word is here? Are we talking about profit? Money? Like, I didn't understand because it was about creating and capturing value, whatever. Yeah, I had a lot of like misinterpretations first time around in business school. I think, look, if your goal as a person who wants to know and experience God and wants to be fulfilled in life, right? We all kind of know the answers to these things. They're very simple. It's about relationships. It's about being connected to each other. It's about thinking of others instead of ourselves. Like, these are the actual keys. And so, not everybody, but a lot of us, especially probably in this particular community right now, have so much choice about how we spend our waking hours. Like, what are we waking up and doing with our lives? The one wild and precious life we're given.
Yeah.
What is the stuff that we can work on? I don't want to over glorify a little box or something, but like the intention, the idea behind that is, how can I exercise what I believe? How can I put that into practice in a regular way, ideally through building something that doesn't just express that from me outward and from my team outward into the world, but maybe even causes a little bit of a ripple effect and can be a thing that in and of itself perpetuates those ideas with the people using them and allows them to pay it forward. That's kind of how I think about what to work on, what's worth working on, that holds my attention and that seems like has that magical kind of endless quality to it, where there's always more to learn, always more to create and do. I actually believe almost any kind of work can have that redemptive quality if you are present with it and consider how you get it done. How are you doing the thing before you, the work before you? How are you showing up and interacting with the people around you? What kind of standards do you hold for yourself and for the thing, whether it's a pair of shoes or food or whatever it is? How do you infuse that with your intention to put love out into the community? And honestly, I gave a commencement speech. It was so fun. I hope they didn't feel like tricked, but I did a commencement speech a while ago, and it was all about like falling in love, but falling in love with the people around you and with your work, and how it's kind of a superpower. So when you come at it with meaning and with intention and with passion, it's kind of, it's not work anymore. And I think you can tap into kind of an endless energy for it. And it certainly is the most pleasurable thing, right? You can enjoy it so much when you show up to the tasks before you every day, knowing what it means.
Well, and I listen to you and I watch you talk about this, and not just the words you're saying, but how you're saying it. And it reminds me of, there was a 2nd century bishop named Irenaeus who said, the glory of God is a human being come fully alive. And like you talk about this, and you always talk about run towards the things you love. And I look at you and you're awake and you're alive and you're super stimulated, and it's not just the coffee. This is what this has done for you.
Oh, that helps.
Yeah, the coffee helps.
Yeah. I I don't want to make us all start bawling, but my mom is right here. I know.
Go for it.
And like, I feel like, how could I have everything? I have lifetimes worth of goodness that has been given to me from my family, being completely loved and being completely supported. And it's allowed me to feel brave and courageous and fling myself out into the world and land wherever and not be worried about what happens next, because I know I have a foundation of love. And that's what my faith gave me. That's what my family gave me. So anyway, I feel like, what else could I possibly ask for? So I feel topped up, fueled with gratitude. And so it's really fun to try to, look, I feel like I get to be a giver in the world. I get to be, what a lucky thing. I get to try to build other stuff to help other people feel even a little bit the way I feel.
Well, and I think what strikes me about saying that is, there is a wealth that we have in community, and there's a security that we have in community that is profound, that that gives us permission. And in fact, it lures us to take risks and to take chances for the cause of love, for the cause of justice, for the common good. And yet I know that even in my life, I can think of ways that I hold back because I forget that. And I think, well, no, I can't step. I remember I talked about before, I used to run this nonprofit, and in order to start it, I had to leave a really steady job and join a group of people that had sort of 1 month's salary in the bank. And, I'm fortunate to have married really, really well. And what Robin, said, because I was hedging, I was like, well, I have to help pay the mortgage. And she basically said, don't you dare use us as an excuse for doing what you're feeling called to do.
Yeah.
and it's like, oh yeah, we have this family and we'll make it through together.
Yeah.
And that's also because we have a certain amount of privilege that we need to remember that we have. But the point of having privilege, isn't sort of wearing hair shirts about it. It's like, great, what do we do with it?
Yeah.
How do we use it? How do we give it away?
Yes.
And so I think there's so many of us, there are so many people in the world that have little or no economic choice in their lives. Most of us watching this right now do.
Yes.
And so where are we being called towards that edge of risk and that's where amazing things happen. And
I feel like it never works to should people into anything.
It's what
and
you
I
get
don't,
to.
no, and I don't hear that from you. I'm just thinking out loud with you. Like,
yeah,
I think this is like the best. I feel like
that's where the fun is.
I have had most of my life. I have had this sneaking suspicion that I might be the happiest person. Like, I feel like this is so great. Like, no, there's no shoulds, but this is a no pressure situation. But oh my gosh, this is a really fun way to live. This is great. Yep. And so, I definitely, I remember talking to friends over the years, ridiculously successful, financially successful and otherwise, right? Like crazy rock star cover of magazine people. And there's a poverty mentality you can have where you don't appreciate the abundance. And there's there's this false sense of security too, that people can have. Like, no one's guaranteed anything every day. So might as well throw yourself out there. I don't know if I'm saying anything conclusive, but I hear you, and I love what you're saying. And I think it does go beyond just somewhere along the way. I feel like there's been this message that if you're privileged, you just need to be thankful. And that's a great thing to be and a great place to start. And then ideally though, I feel like that should activate all of us, not just to sit back and be like, I am so thankful. Like, now what? Now what do we do?
Now what? So. Well, and so do you have a few more minutes? I know we're sort of.
Yeah, I'm actually good. I don't see any baby crying on monitor yet. Seriously,
okay.
Rez is on it. He's the best.
Excellent. So one of the things.
You need to know one thing. Did I hear you ask what baby? And I needed to show you the baby? Okay.
Yeah. Oh, well, I'm sorry. What baby, please?
That baby. That baby.
Last time we saw her at All Saints, she was geographically different located. Yes.
In there. I know.
It was Christmas Eve. Oh my gosh.
I was so
comfortable. Oh my God. Well, and we don't have the most comfortable pews to begin with sometimes. So I just thank you for coming.
I was like using my sons as pillows. I mean, I was just anyway.
So one of the things I love, and again, staying with AllTruists, is this whole concept of empathy building.
Yeah.
And can you talk about the importance of that, and also what's the difference between empathy and sympathy?
Yes. I hope I get this right. Again, I'm sure there's any number of people here today who could out definition me on this one, but as I understand it, let's see if this sounds right. Like, sympathy is about understanding somebody else's feelings in sort of a more detached way, like, or you see and you see somebody is sad and it makes you kind of feel sad for them. But empathy is really understanding and getting inside that experience as much as you possibly can. So, a thing that I have gotten on my soapbox about over the years, and that again is part of the whole way that I look at the world for Kiva and every other things, is that there's a bit of a brokenness, quite a brokenness in a lot of the messaging that many well-intentioned nonprofits and other orgs put out there that end up kind of focusing on the sympathy part, but also it's a one-sided story that's put out there oftentimes because it's so powerful to have sympathy for somebody else. It's it's so painful. So I notice a lot of nonprofits just say the sob story, like just sadness, desperation, suffering, the bad stuff about another person's life, to activate feelings of guilt, sadness, even shame about our own relative privilege, and activate sympathy, but maybe not the best way, so that then we might give or take an action and then kind of do that to like relieve our own pain in that moment, but don't actually tell the whole story of we end up pitying that person and otherizing them and feeling like we're jumping in to save the day when actually it's not quite that. So there's another side of the story, right? The things they've done well, the hard work they're putting in, the victories, the joy that other human, all of us can have at least a little bit of.
Right.
So that side isn't being told, I think, enough. And also when you're developing that empathy, like what do you do with them? The kids are running outside, but they're basically naked. I'm not gonna wave them in. So it's either pajamas or nudity here. So we got, so I feel like when you build empathy in the right way, it can make you feel more connected and not less connected. I guess that's the hope. Because if we all felt more perpetually connected to each other, I do feel like a lot of the problems that exist, structural inequalities, they kind of start to remedy themselves somewhat naturally, and it wouldn't have to be, again, it's like it wouldn't have to be on the other side of things, like a shaming or a should-ing into we should all help. I think we all want to help. I think we just feel so disconnected and don't have straightforward ways to do that all the time. But ideally, if we tell the story a little differently, we'll feel more connected. It'll be more of of course, like obvious set of choices to behave in a way that considers all of us, not just it occurs to us when we're in pain from seeing a sad story, Yeah.
And I wonder, I'm just sort of thinking out loud, because so much of, especially when we go outside the United States, especially when we go.
Good definition in the chat. Sorry, good definition in the chat. Thank you. Sorry to
interrupt. Somebody, that's fine.
Perfect.
There you go. Yeah, John Armstrong got
Thanks,
that.
John.
Yeah, thanks, John. We're gonna have John here soon. So much of poverty globally is a result, or at least colonialism is a huge contributing factor to, where Western countries have gone and taken the resources and fostered, dependency that's really toxic. And what you're describing, and it is sort of the, I call it sort of the Sally Struthers approach, which is, it's like, okay, let's feel sorry for, and then that will make us give. What it does is I don't even think infantilizes is the right word, because I'm not sure that's fair to infants. But for lack of a better term, it infantilizes people, and it makes us, again, as you said, it others them. And part of what I wonder is there a way that even like through a box like that, if you're dealing with something in another country, to also have a history piece that says this is some of the proud culture of this country.
Like, why did this problem come to be? What are
and even before that, it's just like because we're made in God's image, and we're all beautiful, powerful, creative, and good, and so to sort of say wow, we're doing this thing in Accra in Ghana, and here is the story of the Ga people and the language they speak, and this is the proud history that they have, and this is to sort of, because we tend to forget that like all civilization started in Africa. Everything we have is because of what developed there. And so are there ways that we can also break down that sort of Western centric story of sort of like we're the helpers and those are the poor folks?
Yeah. I love that idea so much. And I wonder, again, the dream long-term is to have sort of this bottomless pit of resources online for people that want to go deeper and learn more. And whether it's like just an aggregation of resources and books and anything else that would allow people to go as deep as they want to go. I love this idea. I love that idea.
Yeah.
I love it. And I think I feel like people would get it, given, one of the, I don't even want to say one of the bright sides of Black Lives Matter. I don't even want to go there because there's so much, but I feel like we've been hearing, people know when they hear about structural inequality, they hear about white privilege, they hear about things that have to do with conversations that are not just in the present moment, but let's go back decades, centuries, right? I think people might have an appetite for it more than usual, and they'll see the relevance more readily, hopefully.
Right. Well, and I wonder, I think about these boxes, and to me, that's one of the things that's brilliant about these is you can't put everything in a box, nor should you try. And I can see each of these, like, we never know what is going to spark one of our kids' interest.
Totally.
And, what this can do, like water. Well, why don't they have water? And then it can say, like, okay, well, then we as a family can start learning more about that, and we can learn more about the history. And that's where we can get it. You're not gonna be able to solve structural issues in a box, and the box can be the seed that starts the process going. That commits us to solving the structural issues.
Amen. I hope so.
Yeah. That's
The
great.
kids had an MLK junior, they had a task, my third graders, to write a speech. And I make my kids be testers. So like they've had to do all these activities. It's mostly fun. And Cyrus wrote about clean water for his, and it was like, it made me so happy. So I think even little bits and pieces can make a very big difference in like these aha moments for our kids. That's the hope.
Oh, that's wonderful. We got to wrap up. Do you have a last word for us, or until we meet again? Because we're definitely having you back, and we're going to do all this in person.
I'm just so thankful. I'm so thankful, and I feel so privileged, and I love being a part of this community. So thank you for allowing me to just talk about what's lighting me up to date. It's awesome. And you know what? If anything I've said can be helpful to anybody that's here today together, like my email is just jessicajackley@gmail. Wait, this is on Facebook, right? Like, well, whatever. There it is.
Now it's out there. There you go.
It is. It's done. Just tell me if I can be helpful, because I feel so supported and encouraged by this community. If I can be helpful to anybody for whatever, I'll do my best.
Well, it's wonderful having your whole family as part of the All Saints community, and this is definitely to be continued. Thank all three of you.
My loving, wonderful moms.
And this is seriously, it is so wonderful having you here. And I'm sure lots of folks from All Saints, I've already signed up for AllTruists, and I hope lots of people do. And we'll just keep this going. And everyone, Jessica Jackley, we're so thrilled to have you here. Keep up the phenomenal work.
Thank you so much. I wish I could give you all hugs someday. Thank you so much.
Someday. Okay. Love you all.
Love you too. Bye.